And I'm probably going to export this terrain as a 3ds file or an OBJ, whatever. The program can do either. And then I'm going to take it into Mari, and I'm going to paint a texture on just this terrain and the another one I'm going to create in just a minute. I'm going to be adding more terrain, and I'm not going to be taking those into Mari, but they're going to be terrains that sit on either side here that have some hero trees on them, and I'm going to create some hero trees on this side and on this side just to add a bit more visual interest to the actual scene itself. So the scene doesn't look completely flat. You're not you're giving the scene depth as you're creating it. You're not creating everything on one level. So by adding a bit of depth to the render, it'll just make the scene more interesting. Always remember though, you've got to keep your render composition balanced, but we'll go through that when we start doing those terrains. So we have our initial terrain here. I'm going to create another one. I'm going to scale it back a bit here while we're zoomed in at the right size. Double click it to open the editor. Again, they default to 256. I'm going to bring it up to 512. For this one though, I'm going to pick dunes. Keep hitting that till you get a shape that you like. Let's hit it a couple more times, see if we can't find something a little different. No. 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 Okay, this one will work. So basically, in view here, you do have all these presets that you can choose: peaks, eroded, canyon, mounds, dunes, which we've just used, iceberg, or lunar. Or you can bring in an alpha map or a picture to create a landscape as well. So you could use like World Machine or something and bring in an alpha map. Do it that way. We'll use dunes here at the moment though. Okay, let's scale our terrain down a little bit more. Again though, I'm going to double click it to go back into the editor because again I want to remove the middle. So I am going to erase all of the middle section of this terrain. And you see you're getting some stretching happening there. That's because of the angle I'm using it on, but because we're going to be completely removing it anyway, it really doesn't make a difference for us. Because we're going to keep eroding it until it gets right down to the ground. Okay. It's just complaining that because I'm erasing it, it's creating polygons. It's doing that because it's deforming the actual terrain itself. Before I do that, I'm going to I'll go okay here. I'm going to pull back on the z-axis on this terrain. Alright, let's go back into the edit mode. Yeah, don't complain. Looks like, let's start with this one again. I'm going to remove this terrain and we're going to do it again. Let's not up the resolution here. He doesn't seem to like it very much. Not on the dunes anyway. Right, this one will work.
to me. You're everything that I can see. You're everything that I can feel. You are my dream.
You see what I'm going to be doing with this in just a minute.
We gotta be together, 'cause we are designed to be forever. And we are refined to say we'll never fall apart. Lean on me, I would always be there. Lean on me through your darkest nightmare. Lean on me, I would always be on time for you. Lean on me, I will be your hero. Lean on me, whether I'm near or far. Lean on me, I would always win the fight
Okay. And again, we're going to pull down on the Z axis here. I'm going to pull in on the the Y, it should be actually, I think. Right back here. Again, we're going to scale it back in the Z. Quite a bit. No, I don't like that. It's not the look I'm going for.
I am what I am, there's no changing that.
No,
I
no,
said
no.
what I say, there's no turning back. You do what you do, it don't matter now. I'm not hoping and praying to work it out. Work it out.
This might work for it. I'll pull it in a bit more. And pull it over a little bit as well. Don't like that overhang though. Where are we?
I'm getting closer and closer and closer to truth, moving further and further and further from you.
This clipping is just pulling up the mesh from the bottom. You have the same option from the top. So the higher the clipping, the less of the bottom of the mesh you're going to see. Let's move it in a bit. Scale it in a bit, sorry. And scale it up.
Got me down on my knees, praying to my God for release. Try to heal my sad, troubled heart. Lend your ear on my hand, hear the song I sing. Listen close to my words, they will say.
I'm actually rotated 180 degrees, I think. I'm taking it just off center. I'm going to move it down. I'm also going to scale this one back a little bit, the first terrain we created. Okay. Basically what I'm, pardon me, what I'm doing here is I'm creating a main terrain which surrounds the terrace. I'm creating a second smaller terrain. I'm just going to scale it out a bit more. Which I'm going to use as more of a path here that leads through to the terrace. And what I'm going to do is take both of these terrains and paint them in Mari, just with a dirt texture, before I put a ecosystem on top of them, like probably grass of some sort. And then I'm going to put 2 more terrains, one on this side and one on this side, so up here and up here, which will have hero trees in it. But before we do that, remember too, the background here is going to be probably forested, I'd say. Probably put it in like a forest environment, I think. This is one of those things that I really don't know what I want to do until I start doing it. I may end up pulling back on the height of the ground here. I'm just not sure just at this stage though. And that really won't matter too much to us even if we texture it up, because the UVs won't change. We're only scaling it in a Z, we're not doing it in X or Y. I may still bring this one down a little bit, I think. And pull this one back just a bit. That's looking a bit better. And it's important to keep checking your model in the different viewports here to make sure that nothing is happening that shouldn't be. That wasn't too bad. I'm going to save my file here. And it's that time of the day, guys, where I need to get a fresh cup of coffee. I'll be back in just a few minutes, and I may as well do that while the file is saving out. This version does save out much more quickly than version 9 that we were using yesterday, but it'll still take it a couple of minutes. So not the 15 minutes it was taking, but it still takes two to 4 minutes to save out. So while it's doing that, I think I'll grab a fresh cup of coffee. I'll be back in just a few minutes, guys, and then we'll look at texturing up these two environment pieces, I think. So I'll be right back. Okay, finished saving out that file, so yeah, I think I probably will do that. I'll show you a way to do this without jumping into Mari, but I think I'll probably jump into Mari to texture up these two pieces here. But if you're working in View and you don't want to have the hassle of painting up, generally in View you won't paint pieces of geometry like this, like pieces of the environment, the ground here. You won't work that way. You'll select your object and you'll assign a material to it. You do that just by double clicking on the circle, and View comes with a lot of materials standard. Oh, is it really? Okay, sorry. Thanks for telling me. Let me pull back on my music a bit. Is that any better, Sniper Echo? Can you hear me now? Maybe I was mumbling a bit. I've turned the volume on the music down, guys, if it was a bit too loud. Yeah, generally you won't export pieces of your geometry. You'll assign a texture to them. I'm probably going to texture them up in Mari, but I'll show you a way to do it so you don't have that hassle of having to export the export your ground and texture it in a third-party program. You'll generally do it in Vue. Do tell me though if my mic is still too soft or the music is too loud. I'll pull it back. Where are we here? It's better? Okay, cool. Thanks for telling me. I may have been mumbling a bit too, I think. But I did reduce the volume on the music, so... I find too with different... I have playlists, and the different playlists can sometimes have the music volume at different levels. And I think this one might be a bit louder than the rest of them, so... let's have a look here. These are just Vue's defaults for things like liquids and that type of thing. Basic tiles. Landscapes is generally the one you want to look at though. Let's throw down a landscape texture anyway, quickly, to see what it's going to do. This is usually the way when you create your terrain, you will assign a material to it, and that's the way you will texture your landscapes up. I don't like a lot of these default materials that Vue uses though, and I'll generally either paint in a unique texture in Mari, which is probably what I'm going to do here, or I'll load up one that I've purchased separately. I do have a landscape folder. I do have for Vue, so I'm going to look for that. But again, this is the way you would normally do it. I probably will end up painting textures in there. Actually loading up for me in this folder. Nope. Alright, we'll browse to it manually. Again, I have a folder here on my hard drive which is just called Eon Add-ons, and that has everything from atmospheres to materials to plants and scenes and textures that I keep in a separate folder on my hard drive. Now there is one I'm going to look for. This one here. No, that one's way too dark. I do want it to look like dirt though. Well, that one looks a bit more like stone, I think. I'm looking at my preview render here as it does a preview, because you're not going to see your materials here in the viewports. You're only going to see them here in the preview window. You can make that window as large or as small as you want. I've pulled it out as large as I can to give you guys a larger image of what's going on. Yeah, so that's the way you'd normally assign a material to a terrain. Let's do it that way. Let's not use Mari. Let's work in view for now. I'm going to select my second terrain here. So before I do that, I'm going to copy my material here from the first terrain. I'm going to paste it on the second one. And because we're using view to do the materials, it blends between the two different terrains pretty seamlessly. You can't really tell. But again, we're going to be covering this up with grass, I think. So let's do that. Let's start with terrain 1, which is a larger piece. Again, I'm going to double click here on my circle to bring up the material browser. At the moment we're using what they call a simple material. We're going to click the down arrow and change to an ecosystem here. It's going to keep our original material, but it's going to allow us to add plants on top of that in what they call an ecosystem view. So these little arrows down here, you can add plants, you can add rocks, all that type of thing. I'm going to add a plant, and again I have a plant library, so View does come with a lot of default plants, but I have a library of plants that I purchased separately or made myself, one or the other. I'm going to be using that. So let's choose some grass here. Now these are made by Azel Effects. They do a lot of tutorials for View as well, so they don't just do textures or materials. And the tutorials are very good. So if you want to learn more about View, you can certainly check out some of their tutorials. I think you have to buy them though. I'm not sure if they have any free ones or not. I'm pretty sure you certainly have to buy these materials. But like I said, View comes with a good selection of grass and trees, so you could probably use those if you're just testing the program out. Let's see here. Let's go with this one at this stage. Alright, so we've blended up one grass. Now generally would say never stick to just one type of grass. You always want a bit of variety. So I'm going to pull in a second type of grass here. Do this even grass. Okay, let's look at these two to begin with. We're going to be changing this up a bit, but we'll work with those two to begin with. You go to your density tab here. This slider determines how much grass the program puts on that object. We'll leave it at 50% at this stage. We'll just go populate. We'll see what that does. There. Again, you're not really going to be able to see it in the viewport. You're going to have to look at the test render up here in the corner. And you can see that our grass is way too big. Well, thank you, Sniper Echo. I'd love to work with you too sometime. And you're always in my chat, and like I said, I always appreciate you showing up and watching. So if you have any questions, because I know that you've played with View that you're not sure about, please feel free to ask me. That goes for anyone watching, actually. Remember guys, if you're not sure about anything I'm doing, feel free to pop into chat and ask me. If you just want to pop in and say hello, that's always welcome and cool. If you just want to watch, that's completely fine. But I'm on Twitch so that I can show you guys how I do my work, and and to try and encourage you guys to get into doing 3D yourselves, because it's fun. So please guys, feel free if you have any problems, any questions or anything you're not sure about to pop into chat. It doesn't have to be about view, it can be about anything regarding 3D. As you can see here, our grass is way too big. So we're going to fix that by going to scaling and orientation. At the moment it's set to 1. Now there's a couple of ways you can fix this. You can do it here, or you can jump back into your general tab here and do it here. I'm going to do it here in the general tab, but either way will work. Well, I'm glad. Thank you very much for saying that, Sniper Echo. I'm glad you get a lot out of the stream. Like I said, I'm here to try and show you guys my workflow and help as much as I can. Thank you, Alchemist, and thank you for popping in and saying you like my work. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's always good to know that there is somebody out there watching me. You never know on Twitch. So yeah, with the scaling, you can do it here in the scaling and orientation, but that's going to change the scale of everything in the scene at the same time. So I always do it in the general tab here for each individual object that is too big or too small or whatever. It gives you more finer control. So I would suggest to you guys using view, don't do the scaling here, do it for each object in your actual ecosystem browser just here. So I'm going to knock the scale back on these. Let's try 0.5 for each of them. And the reason that the grass is too big, because remember we went to lengths to make sure that our terrace was scaled correctly, but the grass is coming in too large, and that's because when Azel Effects made the grass models, they made them for an older version of the software, and over the years Vue have changed their scale factor quite a bit. They've actually made it much more realistic now as to what it used to be. That's the reason you'll find some of these plants that you purchase online or you get from websites are going to be a bit too big, because when Eon updated the software they changed the scale. So we'll knock it back to 0.5, we'll repopulate. You've always got to repopulate after you change anything like that. And again, remember we're looking at this preview window up here, because you're not going to see it down here really. Again though, I still think the grass is looking a little bit too large. So let's take it back to 0.2 on each of them. Again though, remember you're not going to see a change until you hit populate. Alright, that's getting better. Let's up our density a bit. So instead of using 50% density, I want it to cover pretty much all of that ground. I'm going to go up to 90. I'm also going to hit OK here at this stage, because I want to get a clearer image of what's going on than I can see in this small preview render. So I'm going to go into my render settings. I'm going to set it to preview quality. So the quality is going to be pretty low res. It'll just give us a better idea of what's going on though. And I'm going to render out a test scene here. And it just gives us a bigger image than this little one here in the corner. But again, it's preview quality, so it's very, very low quality. And thank you for the auto host, Sniper Echo. Now I'm doing this so I can get an indication of whether the size that we've set up for this grass is correct or not. This is the way you're going to have to work in Vue quite a lot. You're going to have to do these small test renders as you start populating up your ecosystem, just to make sure that things are looking correct and that they're the right scale as well. tends to slow down your workflow a little bit, but it's the only way to really judge correctly. Like I said, you can work with this small preview here in the corner. I've made it as large as view will let me, but even that really doesn't show you properly. You really should do a test render here. I think our size is probably okay for our blades of grass here. I want it to look a bit overgrown. I don't want it to look like it's manicured lawn. Like the Art Nouveau garden entrance I showed you guys yesterday, that lawn was very even. I don't want that look for this because I want to put this model, I think, in a forested setting, so I want it to look a bit overgrown and a little bit neglected. I don't want it to look like it's sitting in a manicured garden. But that's the other option we could... I mean, the model would look nice in a manicured garden, don't get me wrong. But I'm thinking maybe something a little bit more overgrown and abandoned would look better for the model. Just make it more interesting image. Alright, like I said, I think that grass size is looking okay. Now this is when I was telling you guys about composition in an image. This, looking directly on the model like this, while correct if you were walking up to this garden terrace, you'd be walking along a path and you'd see it directly ahead of you like it is here. But for a rendered image, you can make it look more interesting, and that's probably what I'm going to do in just a minute here. Going to wait for it to finish doing this final pass here for the render. And again, this render was so I could judge the size, the scale of the grass itself, and the scale is looking okay. We're at 96%, so it's almost done. And this little dialogue box up here will show you exactly how much is rendered and how much is left. It even gives you an indication of how many minutes or seconds are left in the render here. Now I want to decide what type of plant I want to place on this second terrain here. Because I know the actual path itself, I want to use plain for that, and I'm going to take that into Mari and actually paint in a proper dirt texture for there. But I also want to add an ecosystem on this second terrain here. And I think for that, let's see if we can't find another grass model that's a little bit different from the main one up here. So terrain 2, double click on the material. Again, it's a simple material, so change it to an ecosystem. Yes, it's just telling you it's going to use your old material as a second layer. Let's go back into our general tab and let's load up another grass. I tend to use these Azel Effects grass textures quite a lot because they created some really lovely grasses for you to use. I don't really want a dead grass though. Throw down a buffalo grass. And again, like I said, never really stick to one variety of grass or any plant for that matter. Always try and make it a little bit more interesting by including at least a couple of different types of objects. Let's go with this one here. Remember though, we're going to have to knock our scale back to about 0.2 because it's too large. So 0.2 and 0.2. Let's leave our density at 50% just for our initial laydown here and hit populate. Now again, I'm looking at this preview render that's happening in the corner at this stage to get an idea of what it's doing. Right, let's up our density to around about just before 90% and populate it again. Now, by all means, we could have used the same ecosystem that we used on the first terrain on the second one. I'm using a different grass model just to see if we can get a bit more interest happening in the render. Okay, now I'm going to up my scale a bit, I think. So instead of 0.2, let's go 0.3. And let's go 0.4 on the second variety of grass and populate it up again. It's going to go okay for a minute to let it render out so I can have a look. You can get an idea if you look in your viewport of what it's doing, but this really isn't a good indication of what's going on. The render is always a better indication, but it does give you a rough estimate of what it's doing. Let's do another test render. Now again, I have my render here set at 16 by 16. If your computer is a little bit slow, even for these preview renders, then reduce the size here to maybe half that, to 8 by 8, to speed up these tests. And again, the whole purpose of these preview renders is so that we can get a better idea of exactly how that ecosystem is looking on the ground itself. But you are going to have to wait for it to do its passes. But like I said, if you have a slower machine and you want to speed up the whole process, then reduce the window size, the render size here because we're using 16 by 16, take it down to 8 by 8. It'll render out smaller, but it'll happen much more quickly. So, but it can be quite relaxing just watching it do its render pass as well, and it gives you a chance to actually look at the rest of the model to get an idea of how else you may want to create your environment, if you know what I mean. So it gives you a bit of downtime, so you're looking at a static image for a little while to judge where you're going to put the next thing or what the next thing is going to be.